So as Stephen arrived home that night, after a long day's work, he joined his wife at the dinner table and gently held her hand, which to his surprise was just as cold as the food on his plate. And for the first time ever, Stephen did not know how to open his mouth. He had no idea what to say, but he had to muster up the strength and tell his wife what was on his mind. "I want a divorce," he said. Not one muscle flinched on her face, but those pained eyes examined his, and she asked why. Stephen avoided the question, which made her angry, so she quickly retracted her hand and dismissed herself from the table. And that night, Stephen could feel the bed shake as she wept next to him. There was nothing he could do, of course. He had simply fallen out of love with his wife of 10 years, and he had fallen in love with another woman named Jane. Well, as morning rolled around, his wife presented her conditions, assuming he was going to move forward with the divorce. And she didn't want any of the money, the car, the business. All she wanted was 1 month. That's it. And in that 1 month, they both had to live their lives as normally as possible. Now, Stephen wasn't at all surprised by this request. He knew that she was going this route because she didn't want to distract little William, their son, from their broken marriage. However, Stephen was a bit startled with her second condition. She recalled their wedding day and how he carried her into the bedroom after the dance. And so her second condition was that every morning for the next month, Stephen was going to carry her from their bedroom to the front door. And as weird as the request was, he accepted. So sure enough, the very next day, Stephen took his wife in his arms and he carried her to the door. Now, little William was following, clapping with excitement. But that only added to the pain in Stephen's chest. His wife leaned into him and whispered not to say a word to him about the divorce. And of course, he nodded as he put her down. Well, the next day was less clumsy. And this time, Stephen noticed that he had not looked at his wife this closely in a long time. There were fine wrinkles that appeared on her cheeks. Even her hair was beginning to show hints of gray. And for a brief moment, Stephen wondered what he had put her through over those last 10 years to make her age so much. Well, as the 5th and 6th day rolled around, he noticed a little burning sensation in his chest. I guess you could say a glimmer of intimacy was starting to return. And as the months slipped by, it became easier and easier to carry her. And it wasn't until she was choosing her outfit for work one morning when he saw that she had become very thin. It turns out she had buried so much pain and bitterness over the years that it was finally catching up. That must have been the reason it was getting easier to carry her. It was not because he was getting any stronger. Well, immediately the door burst open and William proclaimed that it was time to carry Mommy. After all, it had become an essential part of William's life now. And how would the little guy respond when Daddy finally let go of Mommy and walked out that front door alone? On the last day of the month, with his wife in his arms, Stephen could barely take a step toward the front door. He didn't want to leave. He held her so tightly it felt just like their wedding day. And so upon getting in the car, he sped all the way to the office, afraid that if he were even 1 second late, he would change his mind. And so Stephen bolted from the vehicle. He ran up the stairs to his office. He told Jane that he was not going to go through with the divorce. He said the reason that he had drifted from his wife was because he failed to notice the little details in their life. In fact, he loved her more now than he ever had before. And on their wedding day, he carried his wife into their home for the first time, and now he wants to hold on to her for the rest of his life. And so that evening, Stephen had this brilliant idea. He swung by the floral shop, got the biggest bouquet he could find, and even inserted a little card into it. It said, "I'll carry you every morning until death do us part." It was perfect. So after arriving home with flowers in hand, a smile on his face, he skipped up the stairs, found his wife in their bedroom. She was dead. For months, his wife had been battling cancer. And Stephen was too busy with Jane to even notice such an obvious detail. And so his wife decided to use the last month of her life to ensure that no matter the choice he made in the end, at least in the eyes of their little William, Stephen would always be seen as a loving husband and a good father. And I think the reason this story about Stephen is so painful is because it's so normal. And he didn't wake up one day and just choose to leave his family. He just stopped noticing. He got busy and got distracted, started living on the surface of things, and by the time he woke up, well, reality had already been slipping away. And I think that's the real tragedy here. It's not that Stephen failed to love his wife. It's that he failed to see her. You know, when you stop attending to something, that's when you guys slowly stop believing that it's real. That's how people become objects. That's how prayer becomes pointless. That's how your own hearts become numb. And so what makes this gospel for this morning hit so hard, especially coming back from Christmas break, is that this is the season where a lot of you are quietly drifting. Not in some dramatic way, like you're losing your faith or something. It's more like you're physically here, but mentally you're still somewhere else. I mean, you're surrounded by all of these good people in this gym, and yet you somehow feel alone. I mean, you say you're fine, but everything looks dull. You scroll because you cannot handle silence. You joke because you don't want anyone to see that you're hurting. And I think if you're truly being honest, there might even be days when you feel so disconnected from your own life, it's like you're watching someone else live it from a distance, as you're left wondering how you even got to this point. Now, looking back, you did not hate God, you just forgot about him. You didn't reject anyone along the way, you just treated them like scenery. It's not like you're choosing evil in every single moment of the day, you just chose nothing with your whole heart. And that's why the gospel for today matters, because Jesus looks at the crowd in front of him, a crowd mixed with hearts much like your own, and he doesn't approach them like they're a problem to solve. He doesn't respond in the same way that our modern brains do, which is to label someone, dismiss them, and then just move on. And he responds like someone who is fully awake. And instead of running or hiding, he drew close to them. And Jesus' heart desires to be with you guys. He wants to feed you, to stay with you. And that's really what the Eucharist is about. You know, it's the opposite of abandonment. Because by God paying attention to you, your heart can learn how to pay attention again. Now, some of you are probably starving, like those in the gospel, and you don't even know what you're hungry for. You think it's more freedom, more fun, a better body, a relationship, a higher grade, a different life, a different family. But underneath those pursuits is usually something much simpler. There's questions like, do I matter? Does anyone here at Pius even see me? If I stopped posting, would anyone notice? And if I told the truth, would I be too much? You know, Jesus answers each and every one of those questions without embarrassing you. He doesn't call you out, he just stays, telling you that you are worth every bit of his attention. And he even does something drastic in today's gospel. He goes so far as to involve his disciples in the solution, meaning that he involves us. He teaches us that love is not only receiving care, but it's also becoming the kind of person who can give it. And so if I were to summarize everything so far, I think I could say that your attention is your life. What you guys give your attention to is what you will become. So if you give your attention to shallow stuff all day, you don't just waste time, you become shallow. If you give your attention to anger, then you become sharp and brittle. If you give your attention to comparison, you become anxious. But if you give your attention to God and to the needs of real people, I think you'll find that your heart will get bigger. It will get softer, and it will get stronger. And that's why this matters right now, coming back from break. Because your attention is being fought for. Every app, every notification, every algorithm is designed to own you, not with chains, but with these constant tiny tugs. And Jesus, he's offering you a different kind of freedom this morning. It's not that he's allowing you to do whatever you want. He just wants you to be awake enough so that you can choose what is worth the cost of your heart. So Stephen's wife asked him to carry her each morning, and that was not meant to be a guilt trip. It was a daily physical act that forced him to be present again. I guess you could say it trained his attention back onto what he was about to lose. And honestly, that's what the Mass can be too, if you let it. Not a lecture or a rule or a command. It's more like God is pulling your attention back onto what matters most before it's gone. So remember that love does not always start as a feeling. Sometimes it's as simple as a choice to finally see what's been right in front of you this whole time. And that kind of seeing can not only save someone's life, sometimes it can even save your own. So as we begin this next semester, be sure to ask yourself, what am I going to give my attention to this year? And am I willing to trust God enough to allow him to carry me to the door of his heart?